So you guys asked for a part 2, and I'm here to deliver. Instead of choosing the bosses myself, I actually sifted through the comments on the last video and selected a few that I found from you guys. So here's yet another 8 reasons why FromSoft should make a full-blown horror game based on their boss fights and lore. And of course, I hope you enjoy. I think it's normal to start with something tame. Yeah, I lied. Vicar Amelia has one of the most gruesome transformations I've seen in video games. I should point out that I'm currently playing through the Resident Evil series, a series where there are a bunch of horrifying transformations. Yeah, I think Amelia is worse than almost all of them. She was once a high-ranking member of the Healing Church, a successor to Lawrence, the first Vicar. In the midst of prayer, while clutching her golden pendant, she violently transforms into a cleric beast of similar stature. The sounds of her bones breaking, the groans and cries of pain, the blood splattering on the statue until eventually settling into her new beastly visage is terrifying. What's crazy to me is that as disturbing as this transformation is, we don't even get to see it properly. All we really have is the shadow, the sound design, and of course the aftermath. The fact that this transformation was so disturbing even without the visual aid is extremely impressive to me. This is a perfect example of when horror is done right. When the best tool we have, the visuals, is not used, and yet you're still terrified. It makes this entire scene a masterpiece. The fight itself is terrifying in its own right, too. It's a giant boss in the midst of a dark chapel, and there's nothing, comforting about that. She's screaming the entire time as well, so the sound design is there too. I mean, Bloodborne overall is easily the most horror-inducing game out of the entire FromSoft series. It's filled with a variety of themes that horror games dwell in constantly. However, I think one of the most surprising moments in the game for me was the fact that the toughest boss is an infant that was just born and uses its own placenta as a giant weapon. The Orphan of Kos is a notorious boss, even outside the Soulsborne fanbase. I saw a couple of comments mentioning the Orphan of Kos and how his entire presence sent a shiver down your spine. And to that I say, I agree. The cutscene is gross enough. You literally witness the miracle of childbirth, except it's from a great one's dead corpse, and the baby is already much stronger than you. And I just now realized that this is very similar to the beginning of Berserk, where Guts is born from the dead corpse of his mother. There are many references to Berserk in the entire series, but this is one I just made recently, so that's pretty cool. The Orphan of Kos screeches at the player relentlessly throughout the fight, and will maniacally flail around its weapon much like a toddler during a temper tantrum, which makes total sense. What I find the most disturbing is its humanoid appearance. I mentioned body horror in my last video, which if you haven't seen, go check it out, and how FromSoft loves to use this in a lot of their design choices. It's disturbing to see something like the Orphan of Kos closely resemble us, but it's not exactly right. His design reminds me a lot of a mid-2000s creepypasta known as The Rake. Now, if you don't know, the Rake is a pale, hairless humanoid monster with long limbs that haunts people, often appearing at the foot of beds or in forests. It induces horror and terror and sometimes causes death or misfortune. Its origins stem from online forums in the mid-2000s, but it's connected to older folklore. They're kind of similar in appearance, inhuman but humanoid in structure, and that's what makes both of these creatures so horrifying. Ironically, the reasoning behind our fight with the orphan is actually a good one. We are essentially releasing it from the hunter's nightmare, which pleases its mother, Kos, who then relinquishes the curse of the hunter's nightmare. Of course, there are about 10 plus pages of lore to explain that, but that's the thesis statement. A surprising number of you mentioned Oceiros, the Consumed King. I didn't know much about Oceiros beforehand. I thought his design was more cool than creepy, so I never considered him. However, when I understood the lore behind this boss, I was appalled, to say the least. See, Oceiros was once the Grand King of Lothric, who fathered the twin princes. Both were crippled, however, and unwilling to link the fire. So Oceiros retreated into the Grand Archives and found an obsession with dragonhood. He would be crowned with a new name, the Consumed King, and transformed into his own malformed pale dragon. He would then father a third child named Ocelot, Child of Dragons, a new champion to link the fire. Now, in-game, the baby is invisible for reasons that elude him, I just thought he went insane and was cradling nothing, but no, the baby is actually there story-wise. Cries of the baby can be heard throughout the entire fight, and you can hear Oceiros trying to comfort his child. I've always thought hearing a baby's cry in places where it shouldn't be has always been unnerving, but that's not the worst part. What makes this boss disturbing to me is when he begins the second phase. He proceeds to smash the baby on the ground, entering a new frenzied state. Let me reiterate what I just said. Oceiros basically kills his own child because it was not working or powerful enough to stop us. What would have made this boss even worse is in the alpha version, the baby actually had its own model. I don't think I need to connect the dots here as to why this would have been horrific to see. Again, I never thought anything of this boss. I thought he was alright, but after learning this, I can certainly see why some of you mentioned him. In Dark Souls 3, there was also the infamous Aldrich, Devourer of Gods. Which, yeah, it's my fault. I should have mentioned him because, geez, he's disturbing to say the least. A once cleric of the Way of White, a religious group who served the gods of Anor Londo. Even though he was a cleric, he had a twisted pleasure in devouring humans and relishing in their final screams. He became so greedy with his appetite that his body would bloat and fester into the sludge-like substance. Eventually, he would gain so much power, he would be worthy of linking the fire. With this, he was treated as royalty. He was allowed to indulge in his perverted ways, devouring even children, some of which were his own. Now, I always thought that Aldrich was the Gwendolyn-looking upper torso on top of the sludge snail, but I realize now that this is the actual corpse of Gwendolyn, who Aldrich is simply puppeting to fight us. I think an underrated creepy factor in this fight is the lack of noise coming from Aldrich. You can hear some sort of screams or cries of pain, but it's really ineligible. He has become nothing more than an amalgamation of digested corpses. There's nothing else left to him. There's a whole religion based around Aldrich who consider him a saint now, and the ways of the deep, which makes his gluttony all the more terrifying. Now that I know I'm basically fighting the sentient form of gluttony who is using the corpse of an old god to fight me, it does make this boss way more eerie than it once was. You know, it's crazy to me that I've never really delved deep into the lore of Dark Souls 3 until now, but yeesh, there's some disturbing lore behind a lot of these boss fights. Another boss that fits the theme here is none other than the Rotten from Dark Souls 2. A giant corpse pile chained together to fight you at the bottom of one of the worst areas in the entire game. For its time back in 2014, you know, the animations were very well done in my opinion. You can see the individual bodies reach out towards the player or move separately from the main attack animations. It's gross, but the lore here is actually kind of wholesome in its own way. The Rotten began with an undead trapped in one of the iron cages from Drangleic. We can see the head is inside a giant cage. It's become a patchwork entity, one who embraces all who have been tossed away or unwanted, now finding new meaning who conjoined with the Rotten. It's not an evil boss necessarily. As a matter of fact, I can argue that we are the villain from their perspective. It's their domain, we're intruding. But you know, it doesn't damper the design in any way. It's still an unholy amalgamation of corpses. I've seen this before numerous times in horror games, and the Rotten is no different. I saw one comment about this guy, and I actually totally forgot about this boss, which makes sense, there's like 400 in Dark Souls 2. Otherwise, he might have been in the first video. Now, a lot of you mentioned Godrick the Grafted from Elden Ring. I don't personally see it because the game doesn't make Godrick to be all that terrifying. The complete opposite, actually. He's deemed a weakling in Godfrey's lineage, and a coward in his own ways. He was defeated by Malenia and was forced to retreat into Stormvale Castle. Here, he began his fascination with grafting. Now, if you didn't know, grafting is an actual thing. Not with flesh and bodies, but with plants. I'm not an expert, but you would take the clippings from two different plants, fasten them together, and eventually they would merge into one plant. It's a method of asexual plant propagation. In Elden Ring, it's way more disturbing. Godrick would graft the bodies and appendages of the worthy tarnished to himself. We can see that even some of his followers have partaken in this ritual, although willingly or forced is an entirely different matter. I can see why some of you thought this boss was horrifying. I mean, he is a mad ruler of bodies, twisted and fused together. Although, I think one boss that does this even better is the Lord of Blasphemy, Rykard. For one, I think his design is way creepier than Godrick. When the shattering occurred, Rykard fed himself to the blasphemous serpent inside the volcano manor. With this, he became an unholy fusion of man and snake. His face is now disfigured, his once human appendages protruding from random spots on his long, slender body. Rows of bodies fill the inside of the serpent's stomach that are now visible from the sheer amount of people he's consumed. It's horrifying to see just how many people have had an audience with Rykard only to be consumed and to join his family forever. You'd never expect it too. The first phase is really just a giant snake, which makes sense for the area. When the second phase occurs, you can literally see his face appear on the snake's body, and his eerie voice, it just fills the entire chamber. Even his sword is tainted with those who have fallen victim to his blasphemy. I saw a few comments about Rykard, and I agree, he's definitely one of the more creepy bosses in Elden Ring. Lastly, let's take our last trip back into Dark Souls 1. There is one boss that I had in the script for the last video, but I scrapped entirely because I just felt like it. Inside the depths, you'll find rats, evil butchers, and tainted creatures that call this place home. However, when you reach the deepest chambers, what you'll find is a dragon consumed by its own gluttony, one who will forever try to satiate its unbounded appetite, the Gaping Dragon. This boss deserves a spot on this list, rightfully so. He's a great example of subverting expectations and the shock value of a horror game boss. What starts as a rather cute little head peeking from below turns into this monstrous creature with a gaping maw for an upper gaping maw for an upper torso. His design is egregious, but one that sticks with you throughout your entire playthrough. His sheer size is intimidating, especially for this early on in the game. Now, according to the lore, the Gaping Dragon was cursed by emotions after the emergence of fire. Its gluttony became insatiable, transforming a descendant of the primordial dragons into this abomination. He's one of the first bosses you'll probably encounter in the series that creates a sense of horror without question. And I just realized many themes about gluttony today. We had the Gaping Dragon, Rykard in a sense, Aldrich. I mean, it is a good theme for horror. Anyways, that's about it for part 2. Just a quick update because I knew you guys wanted one, but I have so many other things I need to keep up with. It's very unlikely that there will be a part 3, but if you think I missed anything, let me know. Lots of games coming out in February, and Code Vein 2 is coming out in a couple of days, so Code Vein 2, Neo 3, Poppy Playtime Chapter 5, Resident Evil 9, all those games I'm trying to cover. So yeah, until then, thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like and to subscribe for more content like this. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care everyone, and of course, stay safe.